Hello YouTube. The search for alien creatures and their vehicles is prohibited on the territory of the Tunguska State Nature Reserve. Employees of the protected area published a large post on social networks. It's like a cry for help of some kind. Definitely, there is something behind it. Russian journalists called the administration of the reserve just in case, because they were interested whether this is true or some kind of a joke. Well, that's not a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Evgenia Moroz, deputy head of the reserve, and the person responsible for educational activities assured them it couldn't be more serious. By the way, I have described the Tunguska State Nature Reserve or Reservation and the young and fearless Evgenia Moroz in my previous video. You can see the link in the description to this video. And of course, if you check my videos in various playlists of my channel, like Siberia, you will find other videos about the famous Tunguska phenomenon. So, Moroz told them the following: we have had precedents related to the fact that people demand permission, want to get into the territory of the reserve in order to search for aliens and wreckage of spaceships. We have 3 or 4 such applications a year, or even more. I even turned to the Ministry of Natural Resources recently. They laughed for 2 days when I asked how to legally refuse such ufologists, and then they answered, "You have completely different tasks. This is the legal basis for refusing to visit the reserve." The reason is simple and clear. The intended crash site is outside the established itineraries. The inspectors cannot adjust their work to those who want to find participants in the space accident of 1908. That is, intelligent alien brothers and sisters who for some reason lost control of their spaceship and crashed into the Earth. Due to the high activity of bears, we must allocate an inspector to accompany any group in order to prevent accidents. But we cannot waste human resources just because someone has different scientific ideas. This contradicts the goals and objectives of the reserve. There are also mavericks, of course. Only one thing is not taken into the account, that Avenkia is not a place for walking about just like that. One gets lost or, God forbid, meets or encounters the owner of the taiga, the bear, on his path. One worry, worry after worry. Moroz and her crew caught such mavericks too. We had a case for the anniversary of the Tunguska meteorite, says Evgenia. 2 tourists voluntarily went to the epicenter of the fall without warning anyone. They got lost. There is no cellular connection. They do not have a satellite phone. My colleagues accidentally stumbled upon their tent. They were so happy that they were found. But you should have seen how happy they were when we drop a protocol on violation of the protected regime in the territory. It was important and symbolic for them that there was a date in the protocol, June 30, 2018. Evgenia was referring to the alleged site of the fall of the alleged meteorite. But let's continue. And if there is an attempt by helicopter, and you cannot take a helicopter, well, you cannot do this, because according to the law of the Russian Federation, the airspace over the territories of nature reserves is closed off, forbidden, especially landing there. The aircraft fly only under the agreement with the administration of the protected areas, either when they plant food along the cordons, I take it seeds, or they deliver a scientific landing party on an expedition. Well, also in an emergency. Now, an unauthorized pilot may lose his or her flight certificate, and the airline will receive fines. And if it's a private plane, the owner can say goodbye to the certificate and to the aircraft. This is the air code of the Russian Federation. All this is spelled out there. In Vanavara, the headquarters of the reserve is located there. There is an air navigation which controls the flights of all aircraft, so it will not work to fly in secretly. And by the way, I think not only Russian mavericks should pay attention to this warning. There may be concealed, let's put it that way, military activities going on there in the territory around the reserve that are not advertised. And I think curious foreigners are not welcome in such a case. So, you have to be very careful not to follow official rules in Russia and other countries too, but be very careful. So where are the aliens? The employees of the Tunguska Reserve, well, although they work in a legendary place, have long ceased to be surprised and treat everything calmly. There are hundreds of hypotheses about the fall of the Tunguska meteorite, as some call the Tunguska event, including ufological ones. Even in the 1960s, the cosmonaut Georgy Grechko came there with an expedition to search for the wreckage of an alien spaceship. Recall that in those years, people all over the world believed that there was developed life on Mars, and someone was even preparing for the invasion of aliens. In his memoirs, Grechko shares, "Back in my youth in 1946, in the magazine Vakrug Sveta around the world, I read Alexander Kazantsev's short story, The Explosion, that the Tunguska meteorite was an interplanetary Martian spaceship that crashed. It was a fascinating historical mystery. Ari Sternfeld, a well-known researcher of interplanetary flights, calculated that it did not fly directly to Earth from Mars, but first it flew to Venus and only then to Earth. So the optimal date of such arrival is the date of the fall of the Tunguska meteorite." Let's look at something else now and let Evgenia Moroz chase unwanted explorers, mavericks, and so forth. Now, when everyone is trying to solve the mystery of the Tunguska meteorite, it is difficult to imagine that in 1908 the event practically did not attract attention of the general public. Moreover, if it were not for a chain of accidents, we would not know about this phenomenon at all now. Of course, what happened at 7:14 a.m. on June 30, 1908, horrified witnesses. In mute fear, Russian settlers and the Tungus local indigenous people watched the passage of a mysterious body so bright that it seemed like the second sun was lit. However, the information practically did not go beyond the borders of the region. The metropolitan authorities and scientists did not react. A week later, references to the meteorite itself and the miraculous optical phenomena disappeared from the newspaper pages. The Tunguska phenomenon was rapidly disappearing into oblivion. What I will add briefly is that there was at least one very enigmatic expedition to the site not long after the explosion. And there was a scientific expedition in the area right there during the explosion, but did not record anything. You can find more details in my books and videos in this channel, and I think I will dedicate more time to the expedition that was actually on site during the explosion, but did not record anything. But in the future, you can find enough references. But let's continue. 13 years later, a miracle happened. The scientist and explorer Leonid Kulik became interested in this event. He was destined to become the godfather of the Tunguska phenomenon. In 1921, Kulik led a meteorite search expedition, and for the first time in Russian history went hunting for celestial stones, thousands of kilometers by rail, on horseback, on foot, on rafts. He had to know how to use handguns, how to survive in horrible conditions. He ultimately perished in the World War II. And this I will mention later in my future video about this strange expedition. But from that moment on, from 1921, Kulik begins to engage in the main purpose of his life, the search for the Tunguska meteorite, as he described it. And it happened by accident, almost mystically. How vividly I remember this moment, the scientist himself wrote down. Leningrad, March 1921, the editor of the magazine World Studies, Sviatsky, comes up to me and holding out a piece of the tear-off calendar for July 15, 1910, says, "Look, there is no smoke without fire." And this was the first article about the phenomenon in the Tomsk newspaper, Siberian Life, dated June 29, 1908. I take it's because of the old Russian calendar style. The date, the calendar was changed later. But here's what it says. As it turned out, this publication had nothing to do with reality. Kulik was personally convinced of this in 1922, having examined the surroundings of Kansk. But thanks to this, he realized that there were really no smoke without fire, and a tremendously important event happened somewhere in the area of Podkamennaya Tunguska. Only faint echoes reached Kansk, whimsically transformed into a fantastic note from Siberian life. But this fiction played a colossal role. It sent Leonid Kulik on the trail, and it returned the phenomenon of the Tunguska meteorite, I would say Tunguska object, to the world. We've been struggling to find a solution to this mystery for over now 115 years. Here's what it said: Siberian Life, June 29, 1908. In the middle of June, at about 8 a.m., a few sajen from the railway track near the Filimonova junction, before reaching 11 versts to Kansk, according to the stories, a huge meteorite fell down. Its fall was accompanied by a terrible rumble and a deafening blow, which, as if was heard at a distance of more than 40 versts in a straight line. The train approaching the exit during the fall of the meteorite was so struck by the extraordinary hum that it was stopped by the driver, and the audience rushed to the place of the fall of the distant wanderer. But they could not examine the meteorite closer, since it was incandescent. Subsequently, when it had already cooled down, it was examined by various persons from the sightings, and the engineers passing along the road probably dug it up. According to the stories of these people, the meteorite almost completely crashed into the ground. Only its tip sticks out. It is a whitish stone mass reaching a size of 6 cubic fathoms. Here is the news passed to me, which, as they say, I sell to you for what I bought it myself. I can add that the photographer I.R. Tomaszkiewicz is going to the meteorite the other day to take a picture of it and beat off a few pieces for my share. It is unclear why until now no one has bothered to report to the newspaper about such an interesting and, most importantly, extremely rarely observed by eyewitnesses phenomenon. Reporting what I was told, I hope that one of the professors of our institute or university will not hesitate to go to the specified place and make, in hot pursuit, a study of the meteorite, both on the spot and in the laboratory, and share it with the scientific institutions. In the message, the magnitude of the meteorite is most striking and frankly raises some doubts. 6 voluminous sajins will give an incredibly large weight of a meteorite, about 10,000 pounds. Something unheard of. The largest meteorite known so far, the so-called Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca, has about a cubic sajin. Similarly, the whitish color of the meteorite indicated in the story suggests some doubts. They are usually black and only gray occasionally. In any case, the nearest investigation by a competent person will free the story I am passing on from unnecessary decorations and correct mistakes. This was the article that I read you from 1908. We could say that tabloid journalism existed back then too. Well, so can we say that? Do we have all the details? I know Kulik studied it and concluded that it had to do with rumors that reached the newspaper. I don't know enough. This is something to keep, attention to if we can dig out anything else. And I will definitely follow up to the extent possible, because some documents never see the light of day in the Russian history. And not only Russia, of course. Sajin is a unit of land formerly used in Russia, equal to 7 feet. Versta is an obsolete Russian unit of land, defined as 500 sajin. This makes 1 versta equal to 1.0668 kilometers, or 3,500 feet. We will continue looking for answers to the riddle of the Tunguska phenomenon. As to what I believe it was, please see my videos about Yakutia cauldrons and the sentinel that protects our planet. I want to thank you for your attention to my work, and I will bring more videos about the Tunguska phenomenon, that mysterious object. We still don't know what it was, although we have our ideas. And I'll bring you other interesting videos about the paranormal phenomena of Eurasia in general, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Central Asian countries in particular, and of course China as well. So if you can support my research, you can find the links how to do it in this description to this channel. Please like my videos and please tell others about my work. Thank you.